Welcome to the B Block Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Scott. I appreciate you for being here. There is no need to delay this thing, man. We are finally here. Finally here, man. Texans training camp is upon us, man. By the time you might even hear this, we might be out there. Hear this, watch this, however you get it. And by the way, if you're not subscribed to the B Block Podcast on YouTube, you should check us out on YouTube. Otherwise, if you like the audio only version, of course, you can check us out wherever it is that you get your podcast. Go ahead and rate, review, tell a friend, and all of that good stuff. But I don't know when you're going to hear this, when you're going to see this, but Texans training camp is basically right around the corner. Starts on Wednesday morning. I'm going to be out there at the Methodist Training Center with Sean Pendergast before they get started. I'm filling in for Seth Payne on the radio. Have done so over the last couple of days. Going to do that on Wednesday. Really excited to be out there. And so with that in mind, I want to focus a little bit on what to watch for. We've been doing these segments the last couple of days on, their strongest and weakest positions and players to watch. I think we did one on Monday, and that's going to be really the genesis of this one. I'm going to do a version of that here on this podcast of the Texans newcomers to watch, like the 5 Texans newcomers that you're most excited to watch at training camp. We'll do that here. And I also want to ask the question and kind of go over this of if the Texans are the Texans a top 10 team in the NFL? Where do they rank among the best teams or the AFC contenders, if you will? Like, I feel like everybody that's not Kansas City, Baltimore, or Buffalo is trying to get into that conversation. And you can say what you want about Cincinnati since they have Joe Burrow and whether they're in that conversation. I don't feel like they are because they have not had enough team success as of late. And Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, just simply those guys alone is not enough to save you from being an underwhelming football team overall. But we'll get into that a little bit. I want to start this thing with the 5 Texans newcomers that I'm most excited to watch. And this is part of what to watch for at training camp. I think we know what the top storylines are. I was on KPRC, Channel 2, our NBC affiliate here in Houston, with Randy McIlvoy and Aaron Wilson. Both guys have been doing this forever. And we did like our top training camp storylines, but it feels like everybody kind of already knows what that is. The big mystery and the big concern and the big question mark for the Texans as we sit here now is the offensive line, how it's being remade. I've talked about this on this podcast as well. Like the surprise of going from feeling like the need was from guard to guard. That was the thing that they were going to mostly have to address. Now, whether they were going to trade Laramie Tunsil or draft a new tackle or what was going to go down with Titus Howard, where they're going to move him. It seemed like the tackle thing was going to be the easiest part to figure out. It turns out that none of it's been easy to figure out. None of us really know what they're going to look like from tackle to tackle. We've got an idea based off of OTAs and training camp, but I don't feel like we know for sure what this Texans offensive line is going to be. So that is easily, by far, the number one training camp storyline, not just for me, but I think period. I think you can kind of just objectively say this based off of what the team is and has been. It's also true that it's not until a few days into training camp to where you can actually get a decent sense for what the offensive line looks like in terms of its quality, how good they are, how are they holding up, for example, against the Will Anderson Jr.'s and Daniil Hunters of the world. And it didn't look great in OTAs and minicamp, but again, they're not wearing pads. They're not really trying to hurt each other or abuse each other the way quite frankly, offensive line and defensive line play works. And so we don't have the greatest sense for that just yet. And I'm not sure we're going to get a great sense for that early on at training camp. But the things that I'm going to really want to watch for, or I should say the players that I'm going to really be interested to watch during training camp are as follows. And I'll name 5 and I'll count down. So let's start at number 5, okay? Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk was somebody, the wide receiver, slot receiver that most recently played for the Jaguars, was somebody that I was advocating for them going to go sign as a cap casualty from the Jaguars, or after the Jaguars released him, I was hoping that they would sign him. Turns out they were so into this idea that they preempted that and went and just traded for the guy anyway, somebody that was probably going to get cut for cap casualty reasons. I think that this is going to be one of the more underrated moves that they made, because I think overall the offseason is a little bit, it's underwhelming compared to the one before, where you're trading for Stephon Diggs, where you're trading for Joe Mixon, where you're signing Danielle Hunter to big money. It's not that type of offseason. And then you just say, who's your big wide receiver acquisition of this offseason? And it's Christian Kirk coming off of an injury riddled season. Like, it's not giving excitement. But Christian Kirk is about as reliable and as explosive of a slot receiver as you'll find in this league when healthy. And I think this is going to be like that critical, reliable third down guy for CJ Stroud. And I think that's going to be the important part about it. Like, everything when it comes to the offense, I think you got to look at it through the lens and through the prism of how does this help or hurt or impact CJ Stroud one way or another. And I think Christian Kirk, his ability to, I said this on the radio the other day, his ability to get open both consistently and quickly are going to be really important for CJ Stroud. Number one, right now, we don't know how many guys that they got that can get open consistently. We know that there's Nico Collins. We understand what Christian Kirk is. Outside of that, I'm not really sure that we can rely on these guys just yet to be consistent in getting open. You can be hopeful, and I am at least that hopeful about it, but I'm not finna pretend like they got a bunch of proven guys in that wide receiver room that are not named Nico Collins or Christian Kirk. So how is that chemistry developing? I get the sense from talking to Christian Kirk at OTAs and mini camps that it is going fairly well, and I would expect it to. But this is going to be one of the more reliable and consistent targets for CJ Stroud. He's going to be a tough cover in the slot. So if you're a slot corner and a healthy Christian Kirk is on the other side of you, that's going to be a matchup issue. I think, to me, this is the best, as good of a wide receiving course they had last year when healthy. I think this is the best singular slot receiver that they've had in a long time. And we can remember when they were trying to figure that thing out, who was going to be the slot receiver, the Kiki QT days and all of that, like trying to figure that part out. They got a legitimate dude. And I think it's going to be especially important getting somebody, again, that can get open consistently, because we don't know how many guys, or if they got a lot of guys that can do that, and get open quickly because of those offensive line questions that are inevitably going to be there until they answer them. So Christian Kirk, number 5 for me. Number 4, and I'm a little surprised that I have him this far down my list, and it should probably be higher. I shouldn't argue against myself in this way. It should probably be higher, but I'm going to have him number 4 just because the rest of these guys, I'll give it away, are going to be offensive guys. This is the only defensive guy on my list. CJ Gardner-Johnson. Now, that's for a couple of reasons. It's the quality of player that CJ Gardner-Johnson is, which is a really good player, but it's also the personality and like just the dog in him, the willingness to muck up a practice, or to, like, you ever see somebody or know somebody that not only doesn't have a filter, but doesn't necessarily have a good feel or read for the room, or like just a little bit off, And I followed the Texans for years where it felt like they did not have enough of those guys. And I can appreciate the DeMeco Ryans era, where as level-headed and as reasonable as DeMeco Ryan seems to be, he's got a thing for players that got a little edge to them, that might have that twinkle in their eye, that might be a little bit unpredictable here and there. And I think that that's what C.J. Gardner-Johnson is going to be. Like, he's somebody you could definitely see getting in a training camp fight, could definitely see out there talking a bunch of noise, talking a bunch of smack. I'm expecting this Texans defense, honestly, to have its way with the offense at training camp. Like, don't get surprised at all. And this happens quite a bit because the defense can be ahead of the offense as the offense is trying to figure itself out and the defense is just reacting. But don't be surprised if it's a common theme that the Texans defense is outplaying the Texans offense at this training camp. Like, I think that that's something that you can get ready for. But at the heart of that, I think it's going to be a loudmouth C.J. Gardner-Johnson and how he gets adjusted to his new team and his new teammates and what that looks like is going to be really fun for me. It should be fun for you as a fan. I think on the field, too, you're going to get a quality player. So you get a character and a quality player on top of that. I can't wait to watch. Like, think about it like this. Last training camp, seemingly for no reason, I'm sure there was a reason, but last training camp, quiet ass, mild mannered ass Derek Stingley Jr. took a cheap shot on Dalton Schultz and knocked him on his ass. This is after there was already an initial scrum and back and forth between the offense and the defense at training camp. And a lot of fans probably remember this because this was a day when fans were out there. Like, they didn't wait for the crowd to go away to put on this kind of show or to do this behind closed doors. Whatever it was, whatever the smoke was, they were there for it in front of the people. Man, if Derek Stingley Jr. is knocking Dalton Schultz on his ass during training camp, I can't imagine what C.J. Gardner-Johnson is going to have to say to some of these offensive players whenever things go sideways. So I'm excited about that. Now, these last three guys are all offensive guys, and a couple of them are rookies, and one of them is a veteran and one of the better players at his position of his era. We'll start at number 3 with Jaden Higgins. And Jaden Higgins could very easily be at the top of this list because I think the high end of his potential, like what it could be, is special and critical, and like he could very well end up being the best player on this entire list if everything goes right. I don't know if he'll be the most immediate impact guy. I think that might be the next guy that I mentioned, especially if he's healthy. But Jaden Higgins, man, similar to Nico Collins, the way we watch this guy move and make plays at that size with that kind of skill, it's going to be a real pick your poison type of situation. Again, if you got both of these guys out there, should be a real pick your poison type of situation. Now, you can look at it a number of ways, and hopefully it's the first one, that he's the complementary receiver to Nico Collins. Like, you pick your poison, you decide how much attention you want to send Nico Collins' way, but Jaden Higgins is going to be a problem for you. That's the ideal. Less than ideal, but still would be pretty good to have, is what about those 4 to 6 games that you got to pencil in for Nico Collins missing because he unfortunately has an injury history. And it seems like at some point, and this could be because of the style of player he is, or it could be bad luck. I'm not sure what it is, but it seems like you can rely on at some point, and this is football, man, this is kind of just the way the game works, but at some point, dude is going to miss games. What's the closest thing that you can get to him without actually getting a guy like that or that costs that, right? Your second round pick, Jaden Higgins. Similar size, similar, not exactly the same type of player, but similar size, similar skill set in the sense that big guys who move very well and are reliable pass catchers. Jaden Higgins is somebody that I want to watch because he could very well end up being the number 2 receiver on this team. I know Seth Payne hates that term. A lot of the football folks hate the whole idea and concept of a number 2 receiver, but you understand what I mean, right? The guy after Nico Collins, who's really, really good and productive for you, I think that can be Jaden Higgins, and I'm really excited to watch him. That being said, the one thing that this next guy has, all right, Jaden Higgins is like a little bit of a replica and overlap with Nico Collins, which I'm good with because Nico Collins is damn good. You make somebody big, strong, fast, and able to catch, I don't care how much they overlap. Give me as many of those guys as I can get. But Jalen Noel specifically adds an element to the Texans offense that I feel like they've been lacking for a very long time. And that's just straight up, flat out speed. I cannot wait to get out there to Texans training camp, especially given the fact that in the early days, there isn't a lot of physicality. They don't have pads on. They're not hitting. They're not trying to hurt each other. The things that stand out in practices like that are guys who are just flat out speedsters, flat out faster or more athletic than the next guy that's across from them. And Jalen Noel has that type of physical ability. So yeah, I think you can make the argument that Jaden Higgins could be the more exciting player to watch as the season goes on. But if they're just out there in t-shirt and shorts, or if you're just going off of just a simple raw ability, Jalen Noel, again, bringing that element that this Texans offense I feel like has been lacking for a long time, somebody that can take the top off of the defense. We know that C.J. Stroud likes to throw the go ball, likes to throw it deep, likes to challenge defenses. These two rookies, these Iowa State guys, I had talked myself into them, on draft night, like when these guys were drafted. The more I get to watch him, and Noah he was somewhat limited at the latter portions of some of these offseason workouts. But assuming that he's good to go, man, I cannot wait to watch these guys. All right. So that's Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel coming in at 3-2. The number one for me is somebody that I'm not even sure, like everybody else that I've mentioned so far, I feel pretty confident that they're going to be a contributor to the team in one way or another in some form or fashion. The next guy is much harder to predict that he will be, but the what if is just too fascinating to ignore or to pretend like it's not there. Man, that's Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is the number one player for me to watch at training camp. And for different reasons, like I don't think what he does physically is going to be so impressive at training camp that you just got to lock your eyes on it and you can't take your eyes off of it or whatever the case may be. I think that's going to be these two rookie wide receivers specifically. Like they're going to fit that bill. But the Nick Chubb thing is interesting because of the what if and just observing how he looks physically, okay? And we've fallen in this trap before, thinking a guy, a running back specifically, looks so good at training camp, looks so in shape at training camp, looks so explosive at training camp, but you know what, for whatever reason, he just not hitting that hole hard. He's not seeing it well. He's a shell of himself, and it doesn't translate. We've seen that before. So I don't want to fall for the banana in the tailpipe, but look, if he doesn't look physically right, that'll be a telltale sign that this is just a nice little experiment just to see what you could get, and then you move on and see what else you got in the running back room. But if Nick Chubb is 60, 70% of himself, what does that look like? What does that mean for this Texans offense? Like the last three guys that I've mentioned, the two rookies and then Nick Chubb, they completely change the dynamic and the outlook of the offense if their potential is realized. And so I'm going to be watching them all extremely closely with this exact thought in mind, man. If Nick Chubb is even close to some version of his old self, it means that you've got a fairly productive second running back, which in and of itself is a good thing and something that all good teams should have. Like even if your number one guy is, Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley, or in this case, Joe Mixon. And speaking of Joe Mixon, and I don't mind beating this dead horse, I think it's super important to manage his workload and to have a guy that can come in there and relieve him, and for them to not have to overly rely on Joe Mixon the way it seemed like they did last season when they didn't quite trust Damian Pierce enough, when they didn't necessarily quite trust Dario Gumbawale to shoulder that burden enough. And I'm not saying not one of those guys could do it. It just didn't seem like they believed that they could because they would have given them the ball more. So how do you preserve the miles on Joe Mixon? How do you keep the tread on the tire? Like, to me, it is having another guy that you can believe in. And I think we'll find out and be fairly certain by the time we get to the end of training camp if Nick Chubb is indeed that guy. Now, I think he can be. I'm optimistic about it, but I'm not foolish to think, the injuries that he suffered over the last couple of years wouldn't impact somebody that runs as hard as he does. But to his credit, man, Nick Chubb, from all accounts, super hard worker, like a normal, regular dude, like does not give off, man, I'm one of the better running backs in the NFL, and I'm, like ego guy. Just seems like a very grounded, normal dude who I'm interested to be around, but even more so interested to watch him go out there and work and see what that looks like. Hard guy, I say all that to say, hard guy to root against, easy guy to root for. And the implications of it is, hey, the Texans have something, again, like I was talking about with Jalen Noel. They have something that they haven't had in a long time. Just like they haven't had speed in a long time, they haven't had two running backs that they believed in at the same time. So those are my five. Those are my five right there, just to go over them again in case you missed them. Christian Kirk, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, and Nick Chubb are the guys that I will be especially watching. And those are specifically newcomers, guys that weren't on the team last year that I'm interested to watch this year. Now, the last thing I want to mention here is this ESPN piece that they did on NFL rosters going into this season, like ranking the NFL rosters, who has the best roster based on, let me make sure I get the headline right. This is a roster ranking, but the best projected starting lineups. I don't know if we framed this properly on the show or not. Like if we just, like when we had this discussion, if we just focus on the teams overall, or if we fixated on what the headline actually says, and that's the starting lineups, projecting the starting lineups. Maybe that changes this a little bit for me, but it's hard not to look at this and read this as them saying, hey, the Texans are the blank best team in the NFL, or blank number of teams are better than the Texans in the NFL. And when I got to this list, it had the Texans at 13, which on the face of it didn't really bother me much. I thought of them as a top 10 team, but I had to look at the list and see who they got, and maybe you can make an argument. I'm not going to be the one to cry about how they're being disrespected and how this is an injustice. And y'all know that's not really my style. But when I look at this list, okay, I think we already know who the top 3 AFC teams either are or who we expect them to be. And for me, it's in no particular order, but I'll go in the order of this ESPN story. Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs. And basically every other AFC team other than that is trying to etch their way into that conversation. That includes who ESPN has as the 6th best starting lineup out of all the NFL, the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, whose biggest strength, as noted by ESPN, is their offensive line, they're saying. But you got the Denver Broncos, and I'm just going to go AFC teams for now, that are ranked ahead of the Texans. You got the Denver Broncos and the Cincinnati Bengals. I can live with the Denver Broncos because it feels they got a much similar feeling this year as what the Texans had last year, a team with a young quarterback that had a really good rookie year, and it feels like that team is on the rise, like they're ascending. I can get folks feeling about Denver similar to the way a lot of people probably felt about Houston last year. But that being said, I don't feel like Houston's gone anywhere. I feel like the fall off is severely exaggerated if you don't include the context of, hey, it was just this one unit that couldn't really get right. It was this coach that couldn't really adjust, and therefore the team suffered because of it. Coach is gone, offensive line remade, and even the offensive line coach is a different guy now. So just changing those things doesn't necessarily mean it's addition by subtraction and they're automatically going to be better. But I don't expect them to be the exact same because the folks ain't the exact same. So, I mean, I still think that the Texans are right there. But because of everything we mentioned about the Broncos, their offensive line, their quarterback ascending, of course, Sean Payton's the coach over there, their defense is like, I don't know. How is it that that's not listed as their biggest strength? Their defense. Because I would say that more than anything. But either way, team on the rise. I'm okay with them being ahead of the Texans on this list. The team that I'm not going to get with, and with all due respect to Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and everything that they've accomplished in the the career that they've had so far, even going back to the LSU days, a lot of respect for these guys, man. A lot of respect and admiration for both of those guys. That is not the best. That is not a better starting lineup than what the Texans have. No way, no how, no chance in hell. The Bengals, at least as currently constructed, they could prove me wrong on this, but as currently constructed and with the context that we have of what their season looked like last year, okay, I understand it's a different year, but the Bengals being better than the Texans when the Bengals have not shown that they can keep a team consistently under 30 points when they themselves score 30 points. Like, their defense is lacking, sorely lacking way too much to be considered one of the top teams or certainly better than the Texans. Like, if Trey Hendrickson is going to be holding out and they still ain't signed their first round pick, Shamar Stewart, who's also a defensive player, like they don't have their best defensive player and they don't have their first round defensive draft pick signed to a contract. So I don't really have a reason to think that that defense is going to get a whole lot better. And in fact, it's the opposite. I might even venture to guess that they could get a whole lot worse. And man, if that be the case, I don't know how this year is going to be any different from last year because it's not like Joe Burrow can be any better. He was all-time great last year. Jamar Chase, the same thing. Like, I don't know how much more you could ask of either one of those guys. And now we've seen already what it looks like when those guys play at their best and it's still not enough because it's a team game and the rest of the team is not showing up in the way that it needs to. So give me the Texans over the Bengals. I won't quibble too much with the Broncos being over them, but hell, man, honestly, if it's me making the list, I'm putting them over them too. You know, I think the defense is that strong and that the quarterback is that strong. So, yeah, forgive me for thinking that the Texans are the fourth best team in the AFC and not the sixth. Is that what they got here? Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, and then Broncos and Bengals, and the Texans as the sixth best team in the AFC. I got to tell y'all, man, that's not going to get it done. You got high hopes and aspirations for the Texans. You better hope that ESPN just don't know what the hell they talking about, which is in play, because this segment was already built into the show when I realized that whoever was writing for ESPN might not know what the hell they talking about anyway, or certainly wasn't really following the reports from training camps and OTAs or from mini camps and OTAs, because they've got, what were the things that they had on here that were ridiculous? They had, let's see. I thought there was so they got Jimmy Ward as a starting safety and Titus Howard as a starting right tackle. They got Juice Scruggs as a starting right guard. And this is not just like talking about last year. They're talking about projected starters for the Texans. They got Jared Patterson as the center, Juice Scruggs as the right guard, Titus Howard as the right tackle and Jimmy Ward as a safety. That's somebody that hasn't been following the team and has no idea what's going on. They clearly don't know that Titus Howard is more than likely projected as the right guard. Jared Patterson and Juice Scruggs both project as potential depth pieces. And the right tackle is the guy that they called the non-starter to know, Blake Fisher. He actually projects to be a starter. So this was really poorly done. I just gotta be honest, gotta be frank about it. This was poorly done if you value the writer or the publication having any kind of feel for what the team is that they're writing about. But my main objection is that the Bengals, until they show that they can stop a nosebleed, do not belong above the Texans in any list that's talking about teams. You want to talk about Joe Burrow? You want to talk about Jamar Chase? That's a different conversation. Those guys belong at the top of whatever conversations you having about them at their position. But as a team overall, give me the Texans. Give me training camp. I'm going to be out there on Wednesday. Wednesday morning, we'll be out there from 6 to 8 doing the show. Me and Sean Pendergast. I'm in for Seth Payne this week, or I have been at least. Seth will be back on Thursday. But their shows will be from 6 to 8, by the way. I should mention that. Like not 6 to 10 anymore. Their shows will be from 6 to 8. And you'll get Texans radio, Mark Vandermeer, John Harris, the fellas holding it down from 8 to 10. So, man, I'm really excited to be back in the swing of things. Can't wait to watch how this team develops. I'm anxious about the Texans not just repeating what they've done the last couple of years. That's without sounding ungrateful for what it's been the last couple of years. Going to the playoffs, winning a playoff game, double-digit wins, a quarterback and a head coach that you can believe in, defensive stalwarts. Like, all of it is worth celebrating and really, really cool. But at some point, you got to take that next step and go from simply being a nice story, a 10-win team, to really threatening for a Super Bowl. So we'll see if they are up for the task. I personally am optimistic that they could be, but that's why they play the damn games. That's why they play the games. And training camp is obviously an opportunity to get a better feel and a better beat on what this team actually looks like. I appreciate y'all for doing this with me. Gotta apologize for my more recent absence. I've had a lot going on personally. I had to move, had some stuff with family, but it's football season and excuses are out the window. The quote unquote dead period of sports is done. And we're about to be holding it down right here on the B Block Podcast. Make sure you subscribe, rate, review, wherever it is you get your podcast. Shout out to Foolish Club Media, because this is a Foolish Club Media production. And until next time, y'all be good.